the singing of O Canada.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all thy sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
We got through it. That's great. Well, thanks.
Thank you. It's kind of like the Maple Leafs, a slow start but building momentum. So, well done. Thank you. Please join me for a moment of silent reflection. Thank you. Item 2.3 is the adoption of the open session agenda. Councillor Seymour Fagan, I believe you have that.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Elmsley, that the agenda for the open session of the regular council meeting of Tuesday, January 28, 2020, be adopted as circulated.
Thank you. No questions? All in favor? That's passed. Item 3, is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest on today's agenda? Councillor Vail?
I have a pecuniary interest with 10.3.1 as I'm employed by one of the parties trying to purchase the property.
Thank you. Any others? Seeing none, we'll move down to item 4, notices and information by members of council and staff. Council, any notices? Councillor Elmsley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This Saturday, February 1st in Fenelon Falls, Snowfest kicks off for its third year. It's a all-Ontario snowshoe race, and it takes place at Garnet Graham Park starting at 11 o'clock. So if folks are interested in snowshoeing, come on out. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson?
Thank you, and through you, this Saturday, February 1st, it's the Midwinter Party, Janettville Community Centre. It's a fundraiser they have featuring Punch Douglas. And next Saturday, February 9th, it's the 3rd annual 3-on-3 Hockey Day in Canada Pontypool Pond Tournament. And I'd also like to say a big thank you and to our unsung heroes, our Public Works Department. For the last 2 weekends, we had some pretty significant weather fronts, and I've had a lot of positive compliments, and I wanted to pass that on, so thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ashmore? Put your microphone on, Ron.
First, I'd like to recognize the life of Percy Robertson. He was a Dunsford area resident in the draft horse industry and world-renowned, award-winning draft horse exhibitor. So condolences to his family. This Friday, the 31st of January, I'll be meeting with Parks Canada officials in a meeting in Peterborough, and it's regarding the ongoing wild rice issue in Pigeon Lake, and I'd like to assure the people of Pigeon Lake area that we're working on that issue, and we'll be coming to a resolution hopefully this year on that issue. So we're working hard to get that done. I'd like to recognize Mr. Ab Carroll. He's a 24-year-old auctioneer from Downeyville area, and he competed in the Auctioneering World Championships in South Dakota, and he did really well. I'd like to congratulate him for all his performance there. The Dunsford and District Lions Club will be presenting the Dunsford Lions Family Day, snowmobile radar run and barbecue. Lots of ice fishing there as well. And that'll be on February 16th. That's the Sunday before Family Day in Pleasant Point, so just on the lake in Pleasant Point. And finally, I will be doing a series of State of Ward 6 updates in the next spring and during this spring and summer, the late winter, spring and summer. And I'll be going to different service clubs and associations, so I'll be announcing the times and dates and locations of each one of these updates that I'll do for Ward 6. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other? Councillor O'Reilly?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's the 50th anniversary of the Lindsay Boys and Girls Club, and they had their launch on January 16th. And they're having youth awards on the May 9th. They're having a golf tournament on July 30th, and they're going to be one of the co-hosts of the annual Dream Ball. Last night was the annual general meeting of the BIA in downtown Lindsay, and there was lots of talk about the reconstruction of Kent Street, and it seems like everything's going fairly smoothly so far, and I think both the staff members and the BIA are out ahead of it, and at the question period at the end, there wasn't any questions about it, so I'm sure there will be as the construction progresses. The mayor and Ron Taylor and I attended the Roma conference, and the premier talked about basically they're going to remain status quo in a lot of the areas. There was a lot of talk about public health and emergency services and the modernization of the public health services. They're going to have a number of consultations coming forward, and there was also a lot of conversation around long-term care beds and the needs for it as well as infrastructure. Larry Hope, the Director of Education for Trillium Lakelands School Board, announced his retirement on July 31st. This Friday night, the Kawartha Lakes Police Services Awards will be held upstairs at the Olympia, and Kawartha Lakes Incubator launch and open house will be Tuesday, February 11th from 11 to 2:30 at 180 Kent Street West. And there's lots of things going on at Lindsay exhibition. The Kawartha Cup is coming February 1st. The Farm Central East show is happening March 4th and 5th. Spotlight in Agriculture is happening on the March 27th, and there's about 400 tickets, and I believe we're sold out or close to being sold out, if not. And they just recently made an application for 170 campsites at that location, and phase 1 is going to be 100. This is closest away from it's the farthest away from the Lake Skugog, and they're hoping to get the first 100 built this time for the International Clown Match in October.
Thank you. Any other members of council? Seeing none. Any members of staff have any announcements? Seeing none. We'll move right into item 5, council minutes. I need a motion that the minutes of the December 19th, 2019 regular council meeting be received and adopted, please. Councillor Vale and Elmsley. All in favor? That's passed. Item 6 is deputations. We have a couple of deputations today. Item 6.1, Luke Wood. Reconsideration of the proposed sale of a portion of municipally owned land adjacent to Elgin Park, Lindsay. It's regarding item 10.3.1 on the agenda. Mr. Wood, are you here? Yep, come on up. If you come up to the podium here, if you don't mind. Just remind the deputants they have 5 minutes. He can do his afterwards. We can raise this podium for you, so you don't have to bend over. Just push the microphone on there if you would.
Here?
Yep, that's it.
Okay.
I know you're both talking about the same thing, but it's 2 separate deputations, so you
Okay.
can just do them. Go ahead.
No problem. So we've requested that we're the owners of 152 Angeline Street, just up here in Lindsay, and as owners of the property, we use the section of the property to our immediate east for extra parking, and due to the tenancies in our building, there's only 11 parking spots that are currently allocated that are on our property, and we've been leasing as well as the previous owner of the building, has been leasing that extra land from the town of Lindsay for 15, 20 years. And that piece of land is it's vital to the tenants of the property as well as us. With 5,000 square feet of office space there and only 11 parking spaces, it makes it really hard for our tenants, who are Farm Credit Canada, as well as an accountant firm, to have enough parking spaces for both their employees and for the customers that they would have on a day-to-day basis. Moving forward, we also have Community Care in Lindsay, who's interested in leasing the property from us once Farm Credit vacates the building in the next couple of months, and they need to know whether they're going to have enough parking to have their services be available as well.
Okay, that's it?
Yep.
Okay, we'll see if there's any questions for you. We'll just get a motion to receive the deputation, please. Councillor Dunn and Elmsley, are there any questions for the deputant? So you're in favor of council reconsidering the motion to
we'd
do a
like to-
direct sale so that
we
you
would
have
like to-
access to this parking?
Exactly. We would like to request that we can purchase the property directly along with Paul Cross,
Okay.
so that we can go along with our regular day-to-day business.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion to receive. All in favor? That's passed. Thank you. We'll deal with that item later in our agenda. Thanks for coming today. Appreciate it. Item 6.2 is Mr. Paul Cross. Same item regarding reconsideration of the proposed sale of a portion of municipally owned land adjacent to Elgin Park in Lindsay. Again, item 10.3.1 on the agenda. Do you need to lower that, sir?
Thank you for making that point very obvious. Thank you, Mayor Latham and Council, for being the willingness to be open to discuss this matter regarding the property on Elgin Street. I'm not going to go verbatim with what I put forth with my deputation, but I'd like to just highlight some points, and therefore you can sort of string along as to what my rationale is here. Lindsay Buick GMC, as we know it today, this year, has been in existence for 45 years. And I've gone back in the files and I can recollect that, or I can see here, that the relationship with this said property has been over 20 years. As you can imagine, over those 20 years, this particular piece of property has become ingrained in the logistics and functionality of what is today's business model. With that piece of property, we were able to grow. In 2008, 2009, we built a new facility from 22,000 square feet to 34,000 square feet. When I bought the dealership in 2003 from John Lindsay, the employee count was 23, and as of this morning, we have 75. Therefore, if you could also want to consider the fact that on that particular piece of property, we house around 25% of new vehicle inventory. That enables us to maintain a certain sales rate, and with that sales rate, we maintain a certain number of salespeople, and therefore administrative staff that's sort of a skeleton crew around that. The willingness today is the fact that we have two businesses, myself and my fellow colleagues, who are willing to purchase this property at fair market value. There's been no conversation about trying to buy this property at a discount. Respectfully, over the past year, and I mean respectfully from a real estate department point of view in the township, there's been very little to none movement on this particular project. And for myself personally, or from a business point of view, this has kind of helped me in stalemate in encountering other projects, such as a development possibly on Highway 35 South with the collision center, because I need to see what's going to happen with this piece of property. Fundamentally, at the end of the day, the use of this property is not for personal gain, it's not for development. There's going to be no submission of a site plan. It's going to be used for what is being used for the last 20 plus years, which is parking of vehicles and storage. The idea would be that if we could get a direct sale done and completed, both parties and I are willing to incur the costs of surveying and appraisals, then we would like to then entertain graveling, fencing, and let's say in the public eye, making it a little bit more pleasable. So in conclusion, I understand that there's pockets of areas of which the township has made arrangements over the years that we're trying to clean up and trying to make some more legalities to it. But I don't feel that it's necessary that we can paint every scenario with the same brush. I'm asking today that we look at this particular scenario from a practical point of view and what the impact will be on two businesses, one involving tenancy and one involving the growth of the business, logistics, and staffing, etc. Thank you very much for your time. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Cross. So get a motion to receive. We'll see if there's any questions for you. Councillor Richardson and O'Reilly, any questions for the deputant? Seeing none, all in favor? That's passed. Thank you for coming today. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Okay, that item is later on in our agenda. I'm not sure if you want to stick around for a bit. If we'll do our best to deal with it later on. We can, when we get to the consent agenda, we can move it up, but until we get to that point, we'll stick with where we are right now. So we'll move into Committee of the Whole. Committee of the Whole, correspondence, we have none regarding Committee of the Whole. Committee of the Whole minutes, the minutes of the January 14th, 2020 Committee of the Whole meeting be received, and the recommendations included in section 8.3 of the agenda. Save and accept 8.3.3, the Code of Conduct and Ethics, 8.3.7, the strategic plan, and 8.3.9, the designation of 264 Pleasant Point Road. Is there any other extractions from Committee of the Whole? Then can I get a motion, please, that the minutes, save and accept those three, in section 8.3 of the agenda be adopted? Councillors Elmsley and Yeo, all in favor? That's passed. First extraction is item 8.3.3, Code of Conduct and Ethics. Councillor Ashmore, your extraction?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to, the first part of my questions is through you to the CAO. So we did this about a year ago. We brought this to council, and then I think it reports 2018-017 and 018. And we were to get a report of the review, and I'm just wondering what time frame it would be when we get that report coming back. There was to be a supplemental report to this, and I'm just wondering when it might be coming back.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So there was a number of initiatives or items that were brought forward previously to council at that time. So it was we were doing a review of all of our policies, and part of it was establishing codes of conduct in terms of reference for non-legislated committees and advisory councils, as well as legislated. And we also did an update to other codes of conduct at the same time. Council opted to adopt a code of conduct for staff and a code of conduct for themselves, which included local boards. The proposed updates to the code of conduct that would govern advisory committees was referred back to staff for further review based on some previous matters in the last term of council related to appointments. That is still in front of staff, and we were reviewing it in the context of a legal challenge that we had that is coming to conclusion at this time. So we will then be bringing forward appropriate recommendations in response to that direction when they're available.
Thank you. And just my final series of questions is through you to the solicitor. A year ago, I had asked a couple of questions, and the solicitor was to look at it, and one of them was, does it breach the Constitution? And the second thing is, this new guideline, would it have procedural fairness? Those two things. Is that going to be incorporated into the new report?
Yes, I believe that's, you were speaking to CP 2018-017, and that was referred to the city solicitor. And the CAO had indicated that that's before me to review, and some wording will be sent back to council, yes. Okay,
just my final question. If this type of a report, if it's kind of overwhelming, do you incorporate the Integrity Commissioner to bring the Integrity Commissioner to help draft it together, or do you find that you can do it in your own office? It can be done without having to get extra help? Like, it's something that we can do internal?
I think that's something that I can do internally. I'll know better when I take a look at it if I think the Integrity Commissioner would be beneficiary to review it.
So just for clarity, this report here is just for council and our local boards, not the advisories committees. That's the report we're waiting for to come back from staff that you're referring to. They're two totally separate codes of conduct and ethics, okay? So this one today has nothing to do with that. That's, do you understand?
I understand.
Okay.
So my first question
Yep.
was, I didn't quite get an answer, like, just a sort of a general time frame when that report might come back, like third quarter, fourth quarter?
The second report that you're referring to, that
Right.
for our advisory committees.
That's right.
And I think
Yeah.
you touched on that for fall.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I expect, based on the timing of the legislation that we've, or the litigation that we were tracking, we would likely report before the summer and bring back recommendations for any updates.
Okay. Will you move the recommendation here as printed? As printed, seconder, Councillor O'Reilly. Councillor Dunn, did you have a question? All been answered? Okay. Any further questions on this item here? All in favor? That's passed. Thank you. Item 837 is extraction by Councillor Richardson, the Kawartha Lake Strategic Plan 2020-2023.
Thank you, and through you. I'm not interested in creating another 45-minute full disclosure discussion, but I do want to, touch base and maybe articulate a little bit more why I was pushing the environment that day. And I'm not pandering to a committee. I'm actually listening to a municipality that's very concerned about the environment. And the communication that I've received, and a few of others that have received this last week, has actually been staggering. And I know everyone sitting around this table, we see it daily, the climate and the environment in the news, and we hear it from our conservations, we hear it from other municipalities, and we see what's happening with our local businesses, and they're making changes. And being the environmental council champion to the city of Kawartha Lakes, I had the opportunity this last fall to see our youths have their first climate change rally. And at that rally, I was given the opportunity, because they had a lot of opposition to the government, to actually educate them to what we have done as municipality and what we are doing, and I was proud of that. So today, what I'm asking for, I'm not asking for wordage to change our guiding principles. I'm asking for consideration to be put on that page, and this is what I'm asking. Will we consider the environmental impact on all our municipal projects in accordance with best management practices? That's what I'm looking for, that type of consideration. We can't turn the clock on how the environment's changing, but I think as a municipality, we're doing some pretty strong things, and I just want to continue that momentum. Thank you.
Okay, so just help me clarify what are you asking that the strategic plan be amended,
Yes.
and how?
I want to ask for a consideration to be put on these, not as in the guiding principle, but as a verbiage, like what Councillor Elmsley had brought up at Committee of the Whole, as a wordsmith to add a clause on that page,
On which page?
on the guiding principle page. And that was, will we consider the environmental impact on all our municipal projects in accordance with best management practices? Or wordsmith to the best.
So not as a guiding principle, just as a general comment on that
Yes.
page? Okay, seconder, Councillor Seymour Fagan. Do you want to speak to it, or you have?
I think I have.
Okay. Councillor Seymour Fagan, do you want to speak to it?
I think Councillor Richardson eloquently outlined all the reasons why we have to move forward with this. It's a word, and it's also what this municipality is all about, and what Ontario should be, and Canada. Everybody sees what's going on. We have families who are growing up here in the area. We need to actually make a stance and stop just saying we're going to do things. So let's start doing it.
Councillor Elmsley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I certainly agree with the previous two speakers and think that it should be included in that statement and be front and center in our strategic plan. And I think, if nothing else, the past 2 weeks of weather should indicate to us that something's going on in the environment, and unless we take steps to do something to help it, it's not going to get any better. And by putting a simple sentence at the front of our strategic plan, I think helps send the message that we are very interested in this and that it is going to be considered when we take on projects and we do things as a municipal government. So I applaud both of my fellow councillors for bringing this forward and certainly support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dunn?
Yeah, it's a harmless statement. It says basically what we do anyway. And I guess I resent the fact that it's being suggested that every decision the city makes isn't automatically considering the environmental impact. So when we built the housing unit over on Lindsay Street, we could have saved some money, maybe. Certainly, we could have saved money on the short term by not putting in the solar panels. But we put solar panels in because we're environmentally conscious. We have programs throughout our entire infrastructure where we reduce our energy needs because we're environmentally, because that's number one on our agenda. So the motion to me suggests that, well, we've been doing nothing, and now all of a sudden we're going to put a line in there and we're going to do more. And so I am somewhat upset that we're suggesting that, because every decision we make regards the environment. I am concerned, as I said at the last meeting, that they may come back and use this against us. One of the greatest impacts on both sides of the coin will be ditching. Ditching oftentimes, it'll save our infrastructure, save our roads, ultimately lower our cost, but at the same time, ditching has an environmental impact, on the communities. So it's a harmless statement, as in it doesn't say something we're not already doing, but I am concerned that just putting it in there does suggest that we haven't been meeting our environmental responsibilities for at least the last 10 years.
Thank you. Councillor O'Reilly?
And maybe just through to the CAO, to Ron, you've heard the statement, you and your staff are going to be the one that's going to be implementing the strategic plan. I guess, first of all, do you see as though it's not, as I understand it, going to be a guiding principle? No. So do you see, would you have a comment on, as the people that are going to be implementing our strategic plan?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So my understanding is it's not adding or changing sort of the fundamental structure, the principles. It's really a stronger, I call it a commitment statement from the municipality in the life of this plan. And I think if I'm interpreting it correctly, that we will make the necessary adjustments to make that sort of commitment statement in the plan. I think what we were questioning previously was more if it was going to be specific as a principle. We wanted to make sure that for council and for clarity to the public that we had definitions around it so that we met the expectations. In my mind, this is really just highlighting that the environment and the conditions around us are significant and that we need to pay close attention in our decision making. I still would suggest that the plan overall meets and probably exceeds the previous commitments that were stated, and this is sort of one other area to make that commitment. So I wouldn't express any concerns with it. I think we'll just incorporate it in the final language when we produce the document.
Yeah, hearing that, I think I can support it as well. Just that the fact that I think that I don't think there's anyone in this room or anyone around this council chamber that doesn't believe that we're an environment first or an environment priority for this municipality. And in our strategic plan, it is a priority, and I can't see that this is really going to impact it. So with the wording as it is, I can support that.
Thank you. Councillor Yeo?
Thank you. And well, I support the idea. I can't see it in front of me, so I don't know where we go from here. I can support the motion, but I can't support the strategic plan until I see the amendment in front of me and in black and white. So I support what they're trying to do, but where's it going to fit in here? And when can we, if we vote for this, when can we expect this back with the rewording or the added? Because I have trouble okaying something I can't see.
Well, I guess there's a couple ways. We can either vote to change it right here, right now, and then that's the strategic plan, it's done. Or we can not vote to approve it and just approve the strategic plan as is, or we can refer it back to staff to make the changes and then bring a final document back for approval, which will delay our strategic plan another month or so till it comes back. It's a pretty simple change, so I'm sure we could get it back next month if you'd rather go that route. Right now, the motion, I don't really have a motion on the floor, just some wording that they're proposing. So I think the motion that we have right now is that the report be received, the Kawartha Lake Strategic Plan 2020-23 contained in Appendix A as amended, with that amendment to report be approved, and that all corporate documents and reports be updated to reflect the 2020-23 strategic plan and its reporting. So that's, I think, the motion that the councillor is proposing. Do you propose it be referred back to staff to make the changes and then brought back to council in February? Is that what you're suggesting?
I do, or we table it until later in the meeting and they can show me where it's going.
Well, I think, I think we can deal with it right now. Do you have a copy of the strategic plan? And I think, what was the exact wording again? Do you want to read it again,
I
Councillor?
have it right in front of me, so if I know where it's fitting in and what
It's fitting in here, guiding principles, and I think you're talking about fitting it in right here, somewhere in this wording above the guiding principles, just incorporating that statement in here as an overall statement, but not as one of the guiding principles, if that's what you were proposing. Do you need clarity on the statement? Can you put it up on the, or just put it up on the screen here, Emmett, and then we'll.
Go after our vision, which talks about a healthy natural environment, which is followed by our mission, which creates a healthy and sustainable future. And so in between the mission and our guiding principles, we're going to add another line. And what are we calling that?
The reason for me doing is
No, I know the reason.
Okay,
but
so
what are
do you
we
want to
calling
hear
it?
what it's?
Yeah, what are we calling it?
Do you want me to read what I've suggested?
Sure.
Okay. We will consider the environmental impact on all municipal projects in accordance with best management practices.
So up there on the screen, where it says these guiding principles outline the foundation for all the work we do, perhaps it just fits in right after that and is part of that next line. And that statement is then changed to include that comment about the environment in there, and nothing else changes in the plan moving forward. It's just an overall statement. I think that's the intent.
I understand and support the intent completely. And we'll vote on the intent, but will not support the plan and principle until I see where it fits. And if that takes coming back in 30 days from now, then that's the way I will vote. So I guess what I'm asking for is a motion to defer.
Defer discussion on it, or?
No, defer the passing of the plan.
Why don't
until-
you ask for a friendly amendment to make this change and then refer the change back to staff with this amendment, and then to come back in February to council for final approval?
Make
Will
it friendly
you-
to refer back to staff.
Will you accept that as part of that original motion, to make your amendment, but refer it all back to staff so it comes back as a completed strategic plan for us to approve?
Well, in my impact today, I feel like we should just deal with it today and be done. So we're not deferring it for 30 more days. That's
So
how I
that's a
feel.
no.
So it's a no.
Thank you.
If you have a seconder, if he has to get a seconder to defer, then he can defer it.
Yes, you can still move to defer it, but we haven't made a decision to defer yet. So we're just going to have this discussion again in February. You're just deferring the whole discussion to February. We're going to start all over again. We're going to be at
All I'm
2023.
asking for is to write it on this sheet so I know where it fits in and what exactly it says in relation to everything written around it. I know what it's going to say, but I don't know where it fits in the plan. So, and if you want to table it, and so then they can have break, they can write it in on a piece of paper where it fits in there, and I can have a look at it, then by all means, I'd be happier man.
Okay, let's table it till the end of our consent agenda.
Yeah.
We'll get it written out, and do we need a mover for that, or can we just table it? Do we need a mover in a second? We can table it till after the consent agenda. We'll make some adjustments, and then you can see a visual in front of you, okay? Thank you. Okay? Not lost. Okay. Where were we? 839, let's move on. The next extraction is Councillor Ashmore. It's a proposed designation of 264 Pleasant Point Road.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. All I was going to say was, the last meeting, there was a question, I think it was yourself, Mr. Mayor, that asked 2 questions, and they were valid questions, and I just wanted to get the answers to council. Who owns this church? So the church is owned by the community, and it's maintained by the volunteers. So, and also the second question was, who's going to look after this church 25, 50 years from now? Well, the community is committed themselves that they're going to be getting younger people involved in this church. So I'm just here to say, to relay information from a resident there, George, that they're going to work hard to keep this building up to snuff, and they're not going to let it go downhill, and they're going to take this designation responsibly and look after the place. So that's what they said.
Okay, so we have that. The motion that you extracted is to proceed with the heritage
Yep.
designation. Are you okay moving it as printed?
As printed, yeah.
You just wanted to supply some more information, so as printed, seconder. Councilor O'Reilly, any further questions? All in favor? That's passed. Thank you. Okay, that's it for Committee of the Whole. So let's move over to Planning Advisory Committee, item 9. Are there any extractions from the Planning Advisory recommendations? Seeing none, can I get a motion, the minutes of the January 15th, 2020 Planning Advisory Committee meeting be received and the recommendations included in section 9.3 of the agenda be adopted? Councillor Vale and O'Reilly, all in favor? That's passed. Okay, we'll move over to our consent agenda. Extractions so far on the consent agenda I have are item 10.1.3, extracted by Councillor Ashmore, which is a community partnership and development fund allocation. 10.1.5 is an extraction by myself regarding the water servicing agreement for Green Eden Developments. 10.2.2 has been extracted, the sanitary sewer backup report by Councillor Dunn. 10.2.3 is a memo about waiving landfill tipping fees for residents impacted by sewage backup. Councillor Dunn has extracted. And item 10.2.4, a flood prevention subsidy memo from Councillor Dunn has been extracted by Councillor Dunn as well. Are there any further extractions from the consent agenda? Councillor Yeo?
Yeah, I had a couple of questions on 10.1.7, the fire hall.
Yeah, you want to go ahead and ask them, and if you can get your answers, we don't have to extract it?
Yep.
Go ahead.
I'm just wondering, and I know we've asked for it in the past year, we used to get reports in closed session on these requests for proposals and the grading and the scoring that took place. So I'm just wondering where those reports are and if we could have a look at them.
Chief?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to council. I don't have that information. This whole process is conducted through purchasing. I don't know if I can refer that to.
I don't think we usually get those enclosed, Councillor. I'm not sure what you're referring to, but
Well,
I don't recall.
We always used to get them in previous terms of council, and I believe we asked in the past year that we get them again, because we'd like to see the scoring and we don't even know the other prices, or we have no information other than somebody looked at it and we're okaying it for $2 million.
Yeah, well, according to the purchasing policy. Did you have anything to add, Director?
I'd just add that the process is that there's a committee that's struck to review all the proposals that come in. So in this particular case, there was members from various departments that participated in this process. And typically it's a 2-bid process. So we look at the qualifications of the firm first. They have to meet the minimum requirements, and then we open the pricing envelope, and price is a weighted factor in the overall decision. So it's not one person that's looking at these. Somebody from purchasing sits in on the process to ensure that it's a fair and unbiased process.
And I understand all of that. Simply asking where the report is that we used to get in closed session, and I know I have asked for it to come on these RFPs, that we get the information in a closed package on the rest of the information. And I'm not saying that we don't, I'd just like to be informed on what the other prices were, or what the if scoring was. Just, we used to get it, we don't get it anymore, so I'm just wondering if we can get it in the future, and if I can get a copy of this one.
So you're asking that a request for the backup information for the RFP be supplied to council and closed? For all
Absolutely.
RFPs?
Yep.
All RFPs or just
Yeah.
this one?
Yeah, we used to get them on all RFPs. I don't know why we
I
stopped
don't know if that's
getting them.
not part of our purchasing policy, is it? I guess we would have to change the purchasing policy to request that, or, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so the purchasing policy was updated. There was this conversation, the councilor's absolutely right. Past practice was there was a closed session update that accompanied an open session recommendation. We've processed them like in keeping with the procurement policy. So if they're within budget, then we're assuming that you would be aware of the budget, but not recognizing the others. So we wouldn't report on that anomaly. We simply bring it forward. If there was a dramatic sort of shift or not compliance with the procurement rules, then we would flag that, in this case, in a closed session to you, that all the bids were above 10% of budget, for example. But I certainly appreciate, we would have to maybe get some direction to look at how we could expand our reporting and maybe report back to council in the next cycle or the next quarter. I know in some cases there's issues just with respect to what we report in open versus closed, contractual arrangements and things like that. But I think I know where you're going. So if you wanted to make that request, we could look at what are some options to expand the reporting.
Yeah, and if I could make that request to expand the reporting on these RFPs, when we're talking about $2 million of taxpayers' money, I'd just like to have a little bit more information. That's all.
So do we need a motion for that, or are you just,
I think you should do a motion for staff to review and report back in, let's say, Q2
okay,
on reporting on RFPs.
on RFPs? Okay. You'll move that, Councillor Yeo? Second by Councillor Elmsley. Further discussion? All in favor? That's passed. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, maybe I should have extracted. I'm sorry. But I want to know, there's the last line in the financial considerations, and I was wondering what the purpose of that last line was. It says that the fire department will make use of the leftover funds. So typically we end at, we will talk about the leftover funds at a capital close, which it says, and then there's that last line put in that the fire department will make use of the leftover funds. So it just sounds like if any money left over, they're just going to use it on something else. So I just want to make sure that's not the case.
Chief?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council, which line is that? I'm just kind of looking through the report here.
Under financial considerations, it's typically the last line is any leftover funds will be reported on in the capital close, which it does say, but then there's another line that seems to be added that says the fire department will make use of any residual funds or something to that effect. So it kind of is after the fact of the capital close, so I'm just wondering why that line is there.
Yeah, Chief, it says that it'll be dealt with through the capital close, as they always do, and then it says the fire department will maximize the use of remaining funds and report through the semi-annual capital close process. So I don't think that's a necessary line for this report. I think it's dealt with through capital close like every other RFP, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it just seemed like an add-on
Yeah.
that didn't have to be there.
No, it'll come back through capital close. There's not a big surplus in that budget there, but whatever's left will come through capital close. Okay? All right, any other extractions? So just for clarity, we've got 10.13, 10.15, 10.10, no, 10.13, 10.15, 10.22, 10.23, and 10.24. Councillor Dunn?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Elmsley, that all the proposed resolutions shown in sections 10.1 and 10.2 of the agenda be approved and adopted by council in the order that they appear on the agenda sequentially numbered and saved, sequentially numbered, save and accept 10.1.3, 10.1.5, 10.2.2, 10.2.3, and 10.2.4.
Thank you. Questions? All in favor? That's passed. Thank you. So let's, in light of a couple of residents who did the deputation, let's move 10.3.1, which has been extracted from consent, the memo that I put in regarding the proposed reconsideration, the sale of a portion of municipally owned land adjacent to Elgin Park and Lindsay. So let's deal with 10.3.1 first. That, you've heard the deputations and the rationale. We have to follow a bit of a process here if you wish to reconsider it. So the original motion that the portion of the land be declared surplus to municipal needs, that the subject property be placed on the open market in according with the provisions as amended, and subject to parties entering into a conditional agreement and purchase of sale, that a bylaw to authorize its disposition be passed, that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign all documents to facilitate the property. So a motion, I need a motion from a mover. Councillor Richardson, you moved it. So you're willing to make a motion to reconsider. It doesn't need to be a 2/3 vote because we've given notice in the agenda, so it just needs to be a majority. So before we can deal with it, I need a motion to reconsider the original motion, moved by Councillor Richardson.
I'll move that.
Second by Councillor Elmsley. You have a question?
I've got a question on point of order.
Yep.
During the deputation, it was mentioned that there hadn't been any movement on the sale. So what my question is that when I read your summation about process, it said that if no action had been taken, so my question through you to the land management person is, has this been advertised? Was this advertised for sale?
Go ahead.
So this came to council already after advertising it for potential surplus and sale. And it came to council with the recommendation that it be for direct sale. And actually at that time, council made the recommendation that it be sold on the open market. But so we haven't processed the file since then. So we have no third-party commitments, and it is it's open to council if it chooses to proceed with direct market sale.
So it was put on the open market with no applicants, or it wasn't put on the open market?
No, it wasn't listed for sale.
Okay.
It was just the 3-week period of advertisement saying this property may be sold by the city. If you're interested, make a deputation to council. So that public advertising process has happened, but we haven't put a for sale sign on the property yet.
So it's not far along in the process that it can't be changed. That process would have happened, would have started regardless, correct?
That's correct, yes.
I don't know. Because it's only because I read your summation, I would consider putting out an advertisement saying that the property is for sale, to me would indicate that an action has been taken. If we actually advertised it for sale, that would indicate to me that an action had been taken. If we had done nothing when the motion was passed a year ago, if we had done nothing, and for me nothing's nothing. Nothing's not a little bit of something, it's nothing. And so I just want to know, did we do nothing or did we do a little bit of something?
We have done nothing since the council has made its resolution. The advertisement saying this may be declared surplus occurred before. And
Okay,
then since
all right,
yes.
stop there. All right, yeah, I was just getting confused with the answer, because, thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to rescind, to reconsider. All in favor?
Well, that was a point of order.
Further question?
Well, just some questions. No, this is a motion to rescind. No, I'm good as far as the motion to rescind goes.
It's a motion to reconsider. We have to pass a motion to reconsider before we can deal with the motion. If the motion to reconsider doesn't pass, then the original motion stands.
I'm aware of that, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm good on the reconsider.
Okay. I'm glad you are. We have a motion to reconsider the original motion. I call the question. All we need is a majority vote. All in favor? That passes. Thank you. So now I need a mover and a seconder for the original motion as printed, which was put it on the open market. We defeat that motion. If that motion gets defeated, then we can move a motion to do it as a direct sale as per the deputant's request. But we have to defeat the original motion first, correct? So I need a mover and a seconder for the original motion, Councillor Richardson and O'Reilly. So that's the motion as printed that was brought forward that we're dealing with now. So questions on that? Councillor Dunn, you're chomping at the bit there?
No, I'm just trying to walk it through the process. So the original rationale behind that motion is fair market value. It had nothing to do with at least in my opinion, with the owners of the adjacent property on Angeline Street or across the road property on Elgin Street. Thank you. Yes. That was never my consideration. There's 4 very viable lots there, in my opinion, and as long as the city gets fair market value for those lots, then I don't care who owns them. And I don't, because these are 4 service lots. They're 4 valuable service lots. I don't know what a service lot in the town of Lindsay's worth, but I'm going to guesstimate it's probably in the $100,000 range, or maybe more. I don't know. So I would like to know before we move down the next path, is that a report comes back with the zoning as to whether or not his property is owned, and to what the values of those lots are. Because I'm still concerned with selling city property for less than its actual value, and I think it's got great value. And I say this about any piece of city property. It's not our function, although we do it all the time. It's not our function to favor one business over another and to pick winners and losers. So I am concerned about rescinding this motion at this point. So that's my position on that.
No, fair enough. And just for clarity, and I'll get the solicitor we get, whether it's on the open market or it's a direct sale, these lots have to be sold for fair market value plus all costs incurred by doing appraisals, surveys, and everything else. So that doesn't change. So, and the proponents, if we do a direct sale, they don't get a better price because it's a direct sale. It's sold for market value. So can you confirm that?
So the property itself is not 4 lots. I think what the councillor is saying is there's the potential to develop up to 4 lots. So if we had sold it as a block, we might be able to garner a higher return. If we had listed it, there might be a bidding war. There might be people who brought it in at higher than the appraised value. We always sell it for the appraised value. And if we had put it on the open market, we would have created a new lot that didn't exist from the park. If we were selling it as a direct sale, we would have severed that into 2 lots and sold those directly. So it is unknown at this time if selling that larger parcel as 4 separate parcels would return us the highest value. However, when appraisals are done, they look at, regardless of the zoning, the highest and best use. So if the property is zoned open space, but its highest and best use is residential, they will value it as residential, and presumably if it's a large lot, they will look at those development concepts.
So if it's sold as a direct sale, then it is sold as appraised value plus all costs incurred to date, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Further question?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I heard what I heard. So as part of the costing process, if the best use of that property, after research, I recognize after research, is residential, then it would be zoned as residential, and it would be a residential cost, whereas if it was, best use was zoned as commercial. But that determination will be done by a city committee prior to any sale.
Actually, the Realty Services Division gets an appraisal, and the appraiser does a review of the current zoning, but then looks at what a potential zone could be. So if they look at the property and they look at the surroundings and they consider a rezoning to residential or commercial, they would decide based on not the current zoning, but what a potential future zoning would be, what that value would be, and that's how they value it.
I'm fine.
Okay. So we have a motion, the original motion that was printed to put it on the open market. We need to defeat if we're gonna go with a direct sale. That's the motion on the floor right now. I'll call the question. All in favor? That's the one you don't want to pass. If you want to reconsider it. If you want to go with the original motion, this is the one you want to pass. All in favor? That fails. Thank you. So the new proposed motion, I think, that we're looking at is that a portion of the city-owned property, it's in your agenda, known as Elgin Park and legally described as lots 5 to 7, lots 9 to 13, Block O on Plan 1, part of Lot 8, 14, Block O on Plan 1, as in TL 31341, except, oh my goodness, R278226 in the geographic town of Lindsay, City of Kawartha Lakes, be declared surplus to municipal needs, that a direct sale to 2 area landowners be supported in principle in accordance with the provisions of Bylaw 218-020 as amended, and the Municipal Act 2001, and subject to the parties entering into a conditional agreement of purchase and sale, that a bylaw with any amendments deemed necessary to authorize its disposition shall be passed, and the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign all documents to facilitate the conveyance of the lands. So that cleans it up with the direct sale. Somebody want to move that? Councillor, sorry.
I've got a motion, though.
Let me get a motion to move that.
I've got a motion to defer that.
To defer that?
Defer it until we get a report back from staff.
On what?
So you want the motion and then defer. Okay, you're good.
Let me get the motion, and then we'll go from there. Councillor Elmsley, you'll move that? Seconded by Councillor Richardson, as printed. Thank you. And now you're proposing a motion?
Proposing a motion to defer until a report comes back from staff on the property.
What do you want to know on the property?
I want to know what the appraised value is, and I want to know what they determine the best use is.
So your motion is that the report be deferred until a report come back from staff on appraised value?
On appraised value, because from what I understand from the solicitor, the appraised value will give us all the information as far as best use and value of the property.
Okay. That's not debatable, right? So motion to defer. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Yeo, you'll second that? Thank you. So it's not debatable, so it's just a motion, you either defer it or we don't. All in favor? Motion fails. So the original motion is as we've just reprinted. Do you want to speak to it, Councillor Elmsley? Councillor Riley?
Oh, just briefly, the report's going to come back, so we'll get to make a decision. My understanding when the report comes back to this committee, we'll see the appraisal, and we'll see if we ask for the appraisal, that we can look at the appraisal, or we can get the information.
I don't think that's the case. Solicitor, do you want to clarify the process? This doesn't come back to council. This is us approving it for sale at market value. Once the appraisal is done, you proceed with the sale, correct?
It only comes back one final time to council, but not as a report, just as a bylaw to authorize the ultimate disposition.
Thank you. Councillor Dunn? Okay.
I'm going to speak against the motion simply because we're now buying, or we're now selling it, because we're not buying, we're selling a pig in a poke. And I would like to know what the poke's worth before we sell it, that's all.
Thank you. We have the motion on the floor. I'll call the question. All in favor? That's passed. Thank you. Well, that was easy. Okay, so that deals with, gentlemen, that's for your deputations, thank you. So let's go back to the consent agenda. So the first extraction is 1013, which is restracted by Councillor Ashmore, the Community Partnership and Development Fund allocation. Councillor Ashmore?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question to, I guess, our Director Shanks, if I could. To do with one of the requests here, and I'm not asking you to change any request, but one of them was Environmental Action Bob Cajun, Inc. And it was for a time-sensitive repair to the wall, the Case Manor wall. Everybody knows what the Case Manor wall is. It's actually a heritage-designated wall. And there's a group looking, or they're actually working on it, doing it in sections to rebuild it. But when I kind of see some things here where the money's gone to other sources, but that's just my opinion. Didn't really agree with where all the other money went, but I just think that this is time sensitive, why didn't this come to at least have some funds to repair this, start repairing this wall? Because obviously it's time sensitive, and if you don't start working on it now, then it's going to be too late.
Director?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. So the Community Development and Partnership Fund is an operational fund. It doesn't go towards projects that are capital in nature, and that project would be capital in nature. Of a bigger item for why we can't fund it is because the wall itself is not city-owned. So as it's not city-owned, community development partnership funds go towards city-owned assets, whether it's facilities or parks. Finally, it also this Community Development and Partnership Fund is specific to parks and recreation and culture assets. So again, it's not city-owned, and it's certainly not a parks, recreation, and culture asset. It's supposed to go to the betterment of the community to enhance a parks, recreation, and culture asset within that community. So those are the three reasons why this fund is not eligible for that project. And in speaking with Emily Turner within our Economic Development Department, while there is discussion, and I'll probably get the exact terminology and wording wrong, while there is discussion about the heritage status of the wall, currently it is not heritage designated.
So that project does not meet the criteria of the grant?
Correct.
Proposal. Thank you. Okay.
I'd have to get clarification because I'm on the Heritage Committee, and I was told that it was designated heritage. And just my opinion here, it's not really a capital thing, it's a maintenance item because we're trying to maintain this particular structure. But I think we should double check because I'm pretty sure it's designated heritage.
If you would like, I'll read you the email directly from Ms. Turner today, if I can find it, that basically specifies, like I say, it just came tonight. I'll try to search and find it. I'll speak to the other item while I'm searching for her specific email. But no, this is a capital related project because it's a rebuild of the wall as compared to just maintenance. So I will read you a portion of the email from Ms. Turner and making sure that my understanding is correct. There have been talks between Environmental Action Bob Cajun and Case Manor asking about the wall to be designated under the Heritage Act. It's not designated yet, although it is eligible. So no statutory protection and no access to heritage restoration specific funding sources exist. They haven't applied for designation. It's all preliminary discussions to this moment.
Okay.
I do know that it's on a list for consideration. So once it gets, no, it's not designated, but once it gets on that list for consideration, then usually there's a grace period there that it could be considered. But I just think it's. Is there any? Just one more question. Is there any, through you to the director? Is there any other sources of funding that the group could look at to see if they could put it towards the repair of this wall?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. So staff have had discussions with the EAB as well as with Councillor Seymour Fagan about this project. Certainly none of the two funding programs that exist within community services, whether it's the Community Partnership Development Fund or the 50/50 fund are eligible for this. We have advised that they could potentially have talks with economic development based on the potential heritage status of it to see if there was any heritage funds there, or potentially even if there was any $1 million makeover funds that were available to it. As I don't oversee them, I'm not sure if they're eligible or what the answer to that would be.
Okay, so we need a motion that the report, Community Partnership and Development Fund allocation be received. Councillor Helmsley and Seymour Fagan. All in favor? That's passed. Thank you. Next extraction is 1015, the water serving agreement for Green Eden Developments Limited. I extracted that. I have no problem with it. I think it's great to see it coming forward, the agreement. I do have a couple questions. I don't understand why it's a 5-year term when our standard term for water allocation is 3 years. I know they've had this water allocation for an awful long time. And I think we could certainly, I would suggest changing it to 3. They can always extend it if necessary, but, and then the other thing I just want to clarify, maybe I'll ask that question first. Can you just, why did we go to a 5-year agreement and not the standard 3-year agreement for allocation?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So typically, the 3-year time frame is to clear conditions of draft plan. They have 3 years to clear those conditions, coordinate with the various different agencies and utilities, and go through that planning process. This particular development is a site plan, a plan of condominium under a site plan, which doesn't carry draft plan clearance conditions. It carries other elements. Also, in order to service the site plan, they have to enter into a separate servicing agreement, which you see before you. There is no hard and fast rule for a servicing agreement. Knowing the approval process and the permits required on Highway 7, and coordination with the ultimate site plan, a 5-year time frame would give the developer a better chance to coordinating and having this development see to fruition. So that's why it's recommending 5 years.
Can you tell me how long this developer's had that water allocation for? Because there are other builders in Omemee asking about water allocation, and I just want to make sure that it's actually proceeding. It's been tied up it's been a project ongoing for quite a while, correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, on page 3 of the report, Council passed a resolution in 2013 to grant them the allocation of the water in Omemee.
So they've had it for 7 years, and you're suggesting another 5?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So in 2013, Council granted their allocation and endorsed a agreement in principle subject to a deposit of $68,000 or $65,000 being paid. The developer had not until late 2019 had the developer provided the check of $65,000 to the municipality. So that's when really the next stage was them to provide the check. They had until 2013 to 2019, I guess, to provide that check. We didn't receive it until 2019, and that's why we're moving forward with this agreement.
So you're comfortable with the 5 years?
I am.
Okay, and can you just confirm, and then my last question, that this is a private water system that we're proposing running from one of our mains to this development, and the properties that will front onto this private water system are not subject to the mandatory connection bylaw, correct? This is a privately run water main that they're funding.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. It's a 75 millimeter water service. I wouldn't call it a water main. And the fourth stat, or the last stat on the front page of the council report, specifically cites the sewer connection bylaw and makes all properties that front onto that service exempt from connection.
So that bylaw that they quote is the mandatory connect bylaw, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. That's all I have. I'm quite comfortable. Anybody want to move it as printed? You good with it? Councillor Ashmore? Councillor O'Reilly, you'll second it. Any further questions? All in favor? That's passed. Thank you, Director. Okay, we'll move down to item 10.2.2, which is Councillor Dunn. He's got a memo for the sanitary sewer backup report. Councillor Dunn?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. 10.2 is the backup report. We had a significant sewer backup on Laurie Boulevard, some portions of Victoria Avenue, which I haven't had time to go around and knock on the doors, and I've got one complaint over in the East Ward. My biggest concern on this particular memo is what caused it. I've got all kinds of anecdotal feedback, and I just don't know what happened. I've talked to staff. They said it's the worst storm in 125 years. Well, I have no way of knowing that without some sort of meteorological report to say it is the worst storm in 125 years. The clean out people apparently were out the next day, and all of a sudden all the problems went away. Now that could be because it quit raining. I have no idea. But what I do know for a fact is that we had a major sewer backup. And there's at least 20 residences on Laurie. As I said, there are some on Victoria that I didn't get a chance to identify. My biggest concern on this particular motion is what caused it? Is it going to happen again? And what can we do to prevent it? As in, we talked about climate change just earlier on in this agenda. If we're going to have increased water events, is our current infrastructure big enough to handle it? Or do we have to start looking at spending money on infrastructure to accommodate the problem? I have absolutely no idea. All I know is that we had a major sewer backup on our sewer system, and I want to find out what caused it and what we can do about it in the future. And I would ask that you support this motion to have staff generate a report.
Okay, so I'll just read it so everybody's clear for the public, that the memorandum from Councillor Pat Dunn regarding a sanitary sewer backup be received. The staff prepare a report that identifies the cause of the sanitary sewer backup during an extreme weather event that impacted northern eastern portions of Ward 5 on January 11th, 2020, and report back to council by the end of Q2 220. You get a seconder for Councillor Dunn? Councillor Yeo, you'll second that. Councillor Dunn spoke to it. Are there any questions? Director, you're good? We'll get a report back. Further questions? All in favor? That's passed. Thank you. Item 10.2.3 is a second memo by Councillor Dunn regarding the waiving of landfill tipping fees for some of the residents impacted by the sewage backup. Let's read the recommendation first, if we can, just for clarity. That the memorandum from Councillor Pat Dunn regarding waived landfill tipping fees for residents impacted by sewage backup be received, and that council direct staff to waive tipping fees for the residents affected by the sanitary sewer backup that occurred on January 11th, 2020 is the motion. You'll move that?
Yep.
Seconded by Councillor Yeo. Do you want to speak to it?
Yep.
Go ahead.
Yeah, once again, as I made the trip up and down Laurie, some people are insured. Some people have blown through over $50,000 worth of insurance. Some people aren't insured. Now, on various other occasions, we have waived tipping fees for flooding where we haven't been involved in the actual cause of the actual, like where it hasn't been our sewers backing up to cause the flooding. It's been other issues that have caused the flooding, and we have created a process for waiving tipping fees. Some people, because they don't have insurance, are they're doing it all themselves. They're ripping out their own drywall. They're ripping up their own rugs. The very least we can do is give them a hand as far as the tipping fees go. As far as process goes, because I've been asked, well, how would it work? When I've been talking to people, I say, hang on to your receipts. And I'm pretty sure that if they show up to Public Works or even the clerk's office, I don't know who actually would handle it, with a bunch of receipts for tipping fees, and they involve rugs and mattresses and couches and chairs and furniture, and they live on Laurie Boulevard, I think we can pretty much assume that it had something to do with the flooding. It's not somebody trying to sneak in under the radar and get rid of a bunch of garbage. So I think it's probably the very least we can do going in, and I would move that motion.
Thank you. Councillor Yeo, you seconded it? Are you good? Yep. Okay. I just have a question. Is there any clarity needed about those folks that were covered by insurance. There's going to be some that their insurance paid their tipping fees, so are they going to come and get money from the city and cover those fees twice? Or how do we discriminate between who wasn't covered and who was?
I'm going to answer that. As I said, most people probably don't have enough money in their insurance to cover all the costs. I've been recommending, as per a memo that was sent out, use your insurance because it's quicker, it'll happen immediately. And then I've recommended that they contact our claims officer and put in a claim for the rest. I think that's pretty much going to tell us where it stands. I don't know if the insurance companies are going to come after us, but it's our sewers. And if somebody sneaks in under the radar and they get an extra couple of bucks because their insurance covered and now we're going to cover it, I think that's going to be the very, very least of our worries. A lot of these people had $25,000 insurance. And I talked to one person that had $50,000 worth of insurance, completely gutted the basement. So I'm not worried about a couple dollars that somebody might sneak past us. I'm really not. But we can challenge them at the counter saying, is your insurance paying for this? And if they say no, I'll accept them at their word.
Thank you. Any further questions? Call the question. All in favor? That's passed. Next memo is item 10.2.4, the memo regarding a flood prevention subsidy. Again, Councillor Dunn, I'll just read it again if I can, Councillor Dunn, that the memorandum from Councillor Pat Dunn regarding the implementation of a flood prevention subsidy be received, that staff report on the feasibility of implementing such a program in the city of Kawartha Lakes and report back to council by the end of Q2 2020, and the details are in your memo. You'll move that, seconded by Councillor Yeo. Go ahead.
Yeah, once again, and I learned a lot about sewers. In our new regulations, new houses, new builds are required to have, when they built it as part of the Planning Act, or part of the planning process, I guess, is that check valves are in place. And that certainly takes a lot of the danger of sewage backup away. In Peterborough and in Toronto that I'm aware of, they have subsidies programs where for those houses that don't fall within that window, they have that opportunity to receive a subsidy from those cities to put in check valves. And we can put our own check valves in if we want to block streets off. Apparently we can do it at a municipal level, so that, and I'll use Laurie and Victoria and Eglinton as examples. The potential is, from what I have been told, and I'm not a sewer guy, is that if we had check valves at both ends of Laurie, that probably would have solved the problem too. But I think we need to do some research, and it is a research request, is that we look into it. I know it'll be a strain on the city budget, but it's a research request, and I would look at staff to bring back a report with some sort of recommendation on check valves to prevent sewage backup.
Thank you. Councillor Helmsley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. About, I'm going to say 7 years ago, might be slightly longer than that, I had the same problem in Fenelon Falls, and I brought forward a motion at that time that we have a subsidy program for check valves for people who didn't have them. And the number that's sticking in my mind is $1,200. And I was under the impression that that motion passed and that a program was to be set up in water and wastewater to do that. Unless I'm mistaken and that motion didn't pass, but I recall at the time that the mayor of the day supported the motion, because the other way it impacts us is when we do the sewer cleanouts, there have been instances where people's basements and other things, they've had a backup. And so it was deemed to be a good thing to have some kind of a subsidy program for those people who wanted to put in check valves. And I really thought that that motion passed and that there was already something on the books to do that. but I don't have any numbers and I don't have the exact date or time.
Okay, well, before my time, but maybe as part of this report back, we can look into that and see if what was initiated, was it area specific, was it citywide, or what some of the details. Sounds like you're talking the same kind of program, so I think we can incorporate it all in our report back, so I think we're good. We'll figure it out. Any other questions? Call the question, all in favor? That passes. Thank you. So let's take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back and deal with the strategic plan, which we need to finalize some wording there. Okay? the motion for the strategic amendment to the strategic plan. This, you see on your screen, is the new wording that is being proposed. So very similar to what is there already. And it is, so that's where it's going. What's in blue is what's being replaced with, not that. Yeah, that'd be simpler. That is what's being replaced with that, with the addition being that we will consider the environmental impact of our decisions in accordance with best management practices while balancing our other strategic priorities. So if everybody's good with that, yes, yes, then we've got some extra wording in there which doesn't throw all our other priorities out of whack. Councillor Yeo, you were looking for a visual? Good, okay. Any other questions, comments? So I think the original motion is that report CAO 220-001, Kawartha Lake Strategic Plan 2020-2023 be received, that the Kawartha Lake Strategic Plan 2020-2023 contained in Appendix A as amended with the above, to report CAO 2020-001 be approved, and that all corporate documents and reports be updated to reflect the 2020-2023 strategic plan and its reporting. Do you wish to sum up, Councillor Richardson?
No, I think we've summed it up quite well here today. We know that we're moving forward and we're doing our best. This just shows another edge to our commitment, so thank you.
Thank you. I'll call the question. All in favor? That's passed. Thank you. I was going to say thank goodness, but I won't. Okay, we'll move on to item 11, which is petitions. We have a petition regarding, 11.1 is a petition regarding the speed limit on Yelverton Road, which is in, Councillor Richardson's going to speak to it. I guess the motion is to receive. I'm suggesting refer to staff for clarification and options, because it says, we, the residents of the hamlet of Yelverton, are petitioning the city of Kawartha Lakes to impose a speed limit on Yelverton Road. So they're not really asking for a reduction. They're just, any speed limit will do?
Well, I don't know if it'll be any speed reduction. It's the problem, it's not actually a problem. What's going on out there is there's a gravel pit from Devitt's Road that's using that as a haul route. So we've had an influx of traffic and they're going at a faster speed. So the residents want to look at it. So if it can go to staff for a report and review, that would be fabulous.
I guess I'm just, what do they want them to look at? What, it says here, the petition asks to impose a speed limit.
Yes, they would like to
Do they want it reduced?
They want
or
it
do they want a
reduced.
speed limit posted?
They want a reduced speed
So a
limit.
reduction?
Yes.
So we should change the
Yes.
wording that staff look at a reduction of a speed limit on Yelverton Road. So can we refer it to staff for report back by Q2 220? I think that's, you okay with that? All right, seconder? Councillor O'Reilly? Any questions? Councillor Dunn?
Just one. So we're looking, I'm assuming right now it's 80? And are we talking about a speed limit in the hamlet of Yelverton or the whole road in particular? Like, do we have boundaries, like from A to B?
Yeah, it's not the hamlet of Yelverton. It's the road, the Yelverton Road, which comes down toward it.
Okay, all right.
Well, Yelverton Road runs all the way from Janetville Road all the way down to the highway. Highway 7A is a provincial highway. So it's not that. It's the hamlet's on the provincial highway, right? So it's the Yelverton Road from Janetville Road down. Okay. So it's our road.
Okay, all right.
To look at reducing the speed limit from 80 to 60, I guess. That's what they're looking at. Okay?
That's fine, yep.
We'll get a report back. Call the question. All in favor? That's passed. Thank you. The next petition is regarding the resurfacing of a portion of Cottingham Road. I guess receive and refer to staff for report back on the status of the road and options by Q2 220. Does that work?
Works for me. It's a contentious area, obviously. There was 13 full pages of petition signatures on this road, so absolutely would love it to have city staff to report and review.
Okay, so you moved by Councillor Richardson, seconded by Councillor O'Reilly. All in favor? That's passed. Thank you. Bylaws. Are there any extractions to the bylaws? Councillor Helmsley, I believe you have those.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Seymour Fagan, that the bylaws shown in section 13.1 of the agenda, namely items 13.1.1, 2 and including 13.1.14, be read a first, second, and third time, passed, numbered, signed, and corporate seal attached.
Thank you. All in favor? That's passed. And then there's no notice of motion. We do have some closed session we need to go into, so let's take a couple minutes to shut the cameras down and clear out the room, and we'll go into close. So we'll just take a quick 5 minutes and come back in closed session.